To understand where Western philosophy begins, we have to go back, way back, to the very dawn of reason in ancient Greece. It's here, amidst the bustling cities of Ionia, that a remarkable group of thinkers emerged. These are the Ionian philosophers, pioneers who turned away from myth and set out to understand the world by looking at the world itself. Ancient Greece was more than just Athens and Sparta. In Ionia, a coastal region across from the Aegean Sea, Greek cities flourished, and with them, so did revolutionary ideas. The thinkers who came from these cities, such as Miletus, began to ask questions that, until then, only the gods could answer. But their answers wouldn't come from gods or myths. These philosophers were the first to suggest that reality could be understood through observation, reason, and a search for the underlying nature of everything around us. Instead of attributing the forces of nature to deities like Zeus, Poseidon, and Apollo, these early thinkers proposed something radical: that nature itself held the secrets to its own workings. The elements, they believed, were not driven by supernatural will, but by forces and laws that could be observed and understood. With this shift came three groundbreaking ideas that would change the course of Western thought: naturalism, materialism, and the study of being itself, known as ontology. Naturalism is the belief that every phenomenon has a natural explanation, that storms, earthquakes, even life itself, aren't magical or mystical. To the Ionians, nature was full of causes and effects that could be known and explained. This was revolutionary because it freed them to explore nature's mysteries without needing supernatural answers. Next, materialism. This is the idea that all things are made of matter, that everything we see, touch, and even feel can ultimately be broken down into a physical substance. For the Ionian philosophers, this meant that the world was tangible, real, and knowable in a physical sense, giving rise to the idea that everything is made up of some fundamental stuff or essence. Finally, ontology, the study of being itself. In other words, they began to ask, what is fundamentally real? This wasn't just a scientific question, but a philosophical one, probing into the very existence and nature of reality. These questions were the roots of a new way of thinking. They might seem basic, but for the Ionians, this wasn't just a curiosity. It was a way of life. By searching for natural causes and focusing on the material world, they could look at the earth, water, and sky and see more than just the creation of the gods. They saw clues to an underlying order. These Ionian philosophers would lay the groundwork for all of Western philosophy. And while each would have different ideas about what this fundamental reality might be, they were united in their quest for knowledge, for understanding, and for truth that was grounded in the natural world. This, then, is where it all begins. With the Ionian philosophers, a path was opened from the mystical to the rational, from mythology to philosophy. They questioned what no one had dared question before, and in doing so, set the stage for all who would follow. Imagine looking out over the endless waves of the ocean, watching the water move, transform, and nourish all life around you. For Thales of Miletus, one of the first true philosophers, this sight held a deeper meaning. Thales saw water not just as a vital resource, but as the key to understanding everything in the universe. Thales lived in Miletus, an ancient Greek city on the coast of Ionia, around the 6th century BC. Known as the first philosopher of the Western world, he was a man of science, observation, and, most importantly, a man with a radical idea. Thales believed that water was the fundamental essence of all things, the very building block of reality. In a world where mythology ruled and gods controlled every aspect of nature, Thales made a daring claim. He suggested that rather than some supernatural force, it was water that formed the substance of all things. This wasn't just a scientific guess. It was an early attempt to explain the natural world in terms of itself, a groundbreaking step toward rational thought. So why water? Thales saw water as the source of life, a necessary element for all living things. Plants, animals, humans, all of them depended on water to survive. Thales reasoned that if life emerged and grew because of water, then maybe water was the true foundation of life itself. But it wasn't only because water sustains life that Thales held this belief. He observed that water moves on its own, constantly in motion, whether in rivers, lakes, or the vast sea. This movement gave water a unique quality, almost like it was alive, holding within itself the power to transform and change. And what about the transformations of water? Thales noticed that water could take different forms. It could freeze into solid ice, flow as liquid, or evaporate into invisible vapor. These transformations fascinated Thales, who saw them as evidence of water's versatility and potential to embody all forms of matter. In his view, if water could become solid, liquid, or gas, it might indeed be the root of all physical existence. Thales also held a view known as hylozoism, the idea that matter itself possesses lifelike qualities. Since water seemed to move with a kind of internal power, he considered it alive in a sense, capable of shaping the world. This perspective was revolutionary because it hinted that the natural world wasn't just a backdrop for life, but a participant in it. So, for Thales, water was much more than a resource. It was a life force, present and active everywhere. He saw the rivers, oceans, and even the rain as signs of water's central role in creating and sustaining everything. Thales' search for a fundamental substance wasn't just about water. It was about answering a deeper question: what is real? This branch of philosophy is known as ontology, the study of being itself. Thales was one of the first to propose that there could be a single unifying principle behind all of reality. Thales' bold claim that water is the essence of all things wasn't simply an answer to a scientific question. It was an ontological statement, a declaration about the nature of existence itself. He was attempting to answer, in the simplest terms, the profound question: what is the world made of? After Thales suggested that water was the essence of all things, another philosopher from Miletus took up the question: what is the fundamental reality of the universe? That philosopher was Anaximander, and his answer wasn't water, air, or anything we can touch. Instead, he believed the universe was born from something mysterious, something he called the boundless, or apeiron. Anaximander was a student of Thales, and like his teacher, he lived in Miletus on the coast of Ionia. But while Thales focused on the tangible element of water, Anaximander wanted to go beyond the physical world. He wondered, if everything comes from a single source, then why should it be something familiar? For Anaximander, the answer lay in the unknown. Anaximander introduced the concept of apeiron, which means the boundless or the infinite. This idea was revolutionary. He proposed that the universe came from something limitless and undefined, a source that couldn't be contained within any single material form, like water or air. The boundless was eternal, without a beginning or end, and it generated all things while remaining hidden in the background. So, what is apeiron? For Anaximander, it wasn't something you could see or touch. It was an undefined substance that held everything in balance. Unlike water, which flows and nourishes life, or air, which we can feel and breathe, the boundless was a non-material, limitless source, a cosmic origin that defied simple definition. Anaximander's concept of the boundless was a departure from the idea that reality needed a familiar physical form. In this, he paved the way for future philosophers to think of existence in abstract terms. His work hints at a universe governed by unseen principles and laws, not just tangible elements. Anaximander believed that all things came into being by separating out from the boundless. From this infinite source, everything we see around us, the stars, the planets, the Earth, was generated. But these creations weren't permanent. Over time, they would return to the boundless, following a natural cycle of birth, growth, decay, and return. Anaximander saw the boundless as a kind of cosmic recycling center. According to him, everything that exists arises from it, exists for a time, and eventually dissolves back into it. The universe, in this sense, is in constant motion, continually renewing itself through this unseen source. Another important aspect of Anaximander's philosophy was balance. He observed that natural forces seem to keep each other in check. Day gives way to night. Seasons come and go. He believed that these cycles were evidence of a natural order rooted in the boundless. Anaximander thought that the boundless held everything in a cosmic balance. When one element grew too powerful, it would be countered by another. For example, fire could dry water, but water could extinguish fire. This push and pull between elements kept the world in harmony. Anaximander also had a fascinating idea about the origins of life itself. He believed that life began in water and that humans developed from simpler life forms. A bold theory that led many to consider him one of the earliest proponents of evolutionary thought. According to Anaximander, the earliest life emerged from a primordial sea. Over time, these life forms adapted and evolved, eventually becoming more complex. He believed that humans had once lived in water before adapting to life on land. This idea, though different from modern evolutionary theory, was remarkably ahead of its time. Anaximander's concept of the boundless inspired future philosophers to think beyond what they could see or touch. His ideas set the stage for metaphysics, the exploration of what exists beyond physical matter. After Thales proposed that water was the essence of all things, and Anaximander suggested a mysterious boundless, a new Ionian philosopher took center stage with his own vision. This time, the fundamental element wasn't water or an undefined source. It was something all around us, yet invisible: air. Anaximenes was a philosopher from Miletus, like his predecessors Thales and Anaximander. Following in their footsteps, Anaximenes sought to understand the essence of all existence. While Thales looked to water and Anaximander to the boundless, Anaximenes believed the answer was air, the very breath that sustains life. For Anaximenes, air was more than just the invisible substance we breathe. He saw it as the underlying principle of everything that exists. Air was essential, changeable, and adaptable, qualities he believed were reflected throughout nature. It's something we feel but rarely see, and for Anaximenes, it was the perfect candidate for a fundamental principle. Why air? Anaximenes observed that air could take on different forms and states. By changing density, air could transform from one form into another, embodying what he saw as the basic process of creation and transformation in the universe. He believed that by rarefying or spreading out, air becomes lighter, giving rise to fire. When air is condensed, it becomes wind or clouds, and when even further condensed, it becomes water and eventually solid matter like earth or stone. In his view, all of reality was created through this cycle of condensation and rarefaction. Anaximenes went further, suggesting that air wasn't just the building block of matter, it was also a life-giving force. He saw air as the very breath, or pneuma, that animates all living beings. In other words, just as breathing sustains human life, air sustains the cosmos. It was a fascinating blend of natural philosophy and early metaphysical thought. This link between air and life suggested to Anaximenes that air had a kind of soul quality. He saw a deep connection between our breathing, the air around us, and the way life itself operates, a precursor to the later idea of a world soul in Greek philosophy. Anaximenes' idea of air as the fundamental element was not only revolutionary, but also deeply influential. Later Greek thinkers would develop his ideas about air's transformative power, leading to the classical concept of the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. Anaximenes' emphasis on air as an active, changeable principle influenced philosophers who would later consider how basic elements interact to create the world around us. His view also held a striking resonance with early Greek medicine, where balance in the body was thought to be influenced by qualities similar to air, heat, moisture, and density. Though Anaximenes is sometimes less well-known than Thales or Anaximander, his ideas were key in setting the stage for a more organized view of natural philosophy. His concept of air as the essence of all things helped bridge the gap between mystical and material interpretations of reality. In exploring air's ability to transform, Anaximenes gave the early Greeks a way to imagine how the physical and living worlds might emerge from a single, adaptable source. It was a dynamic and influential idea, one that kept the Greek philosophical tradition alive, moving, and continually evolving. Among the ancient Greek philosophers, few were as enigmatic or influential as Heraclitus of Ephesus. Known as the weeping philosopher, and often depicted as solemn and reflective, Heraclitus introduced a doctrine that would challenge the way people saw reality. A doctrine centered on fire, change, and the ceaseless flow of existence. Heraclitus hailed from Ephesus, a prosperous city with a deep cultural and religious history. Unlike the Ionian philosophers before him, who sought a single substance as the essence of reality, Heraclitus didn't settle on one tangible element as the answer. Instead, he believed that the universe was in a constant state of flux, always changing, always in motion. For Heraclitus, fire symbolized this ongoing change. Fire is dynamic, transforming everything it touches, always active and never still. He saw it as a metaphor for the universe itself, an endlessly shifting and transformative force that shapes all of reality. Heraclitus didn't believe fire was the literal substance of all things. Rather, he used fire to represent the principle of transformation. Just as fire consumes and creates, the world itself is in a process of becoming, of perpetual creation and destruction. Heraclitus is perhaps best known for his phrase, "You never step into the same river twice." This captures his belief that everything in life and nature is always changing. The river you step into today is not the same river as yesterday, as the water continues to flow and the conditions constantly shift. This philosophy extends beyond rivers. It's about life itself. Everything we experience, every moment we live, is constantly passing by, never to be repeated. This is why Heraclitus is often called the weeping philosopher. He felt deeply about the human condition, recognizing the inevitability of change, decay, and loss. For him, this was a source of profound sorrow. Heraclitus saw the human experience as a struggle to find meaning in a world where everything is temporary, where everything slips away. Life itself, like fire, was beautiful but fleeting. This view set him apart from other philosophers, giving his work an existential quality that would resonate through the ages. For Heraclitus, this concept of perpetual change was the one constant of reality. While Heraclitus believed the world was always changing, he didn't see this change as random or chaotic. Instead, he believed there was a guiding principle, a rational structure that he called the logos. This word, which would later become central in Christian theology, meant word, reason, or principle. To Heraclitus, the logos was the underlying order in the universe that governed all change. Heraclitus was fascinated by the tension between change and order. On the one hand, he saw that everything in the universe was in a state of endless change. On the other, he noticed that change didn't unfold randomly. It followed certain patterns. This ordering force, the rational harmony within all change, he named the logos. Heraclitus believed that life's apparent contradictions are part of a greater balance, an intricate dance of opposites that brings structure and meaning to the world. He saw the universe as a unity of these opposing forces, held together by the logos. Fire and water, day and night, life and death. All these opposites coexist, guided by a rational order. This is where Heraclitus stood apart from his fellow philosophers. He didn't see reality as a chaotic mess of change, but as a dynamic system of balance and tension. Through the logos, all these opposites fit together to create a cohesive whole. Heraclitus described the logos as a kind of cosmic wisdom that permeates all things. He believed it was the source of knowledge, the ultimate principle that even gods and men must follow. It's an idea that, though complex, resonates with us on a very instinctual level. We feel that something is guiding the rhythms of nature, giving direction to life. But while the logos is present everywhere, Heraclitus believed it was not easy to perceive. He argued that many people remain unaware of this underlying order, missing the greater rationality in life's events. In his view, to be wise is to recognize the logos and to align oneself with it, to see beyond the surface and appreciate the deep structure of reality. Heraclitus's concept of the logos didn't fade after his time. In fact, it would become one of the most influential ideas in Western thought. When the New Testament was written, the Apostle John opened his gospel with the words, "In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God." This phrase connected Heraclitus' concept with Christian theology, presenting Jesus as the divine Logos, the ultimate rational and guiding force of the universe. In theology, the Logos became central to understanding the relationship between God and creation. In philosophy, thinkers like the Stoics embraced the Logos as the rational principle of nature, while modern science has pursued a similar idea in its quest to uncover the laws of the universe. Heraclitus's insight, that change has structure, that there is a coherence to life's complexities, continues to shape our thinking. Today, the idea of the Logos reminds us that even in times of chaos and change, there may be an underlying order. In a world where we're often confronted by uncertainty, Heraclitus' vision encourages us to look deeper, to seek the patterns that connect events, and to trust that there is a reason within the flow of life. Heraclitus' Logos reminds us that there is wisdom in balance, coherence within change, and unity amid the diversity of life. By seeing the world through the lens of the Logos, we embrace a journey toward understanding and connection that spans the ages. Early Greek philosophy has often been called the birthplace of Western thought, and for good reason. Today, we'll wrap up our journey through the ideas of the Ionian philosophers, tracing their contributions and exploring the powerful legacy they left behind. From Thales' insight into water to Heraclitus' concept of the Logos, these thinkers laid the groundwork for the way we understand the universe, humanity, and knowledge itself. The Ionians were the pioneers of a bold new approach to understanding the world. Rather than relying on myths or superstitious explanations, they sought natural principles and rational structures that could explain everything from the cosmos to daily life. These early thinkers believed that reality could be broken down into fundamental elements, each with its own unique properties, which they called the arche, or origin. Let's briefly recap the major contributions of the Ionian philosophers. Thales of Miletus believed that water was the essence of all things, reflecting his search for a unifying substance. His student Anaximander took this idea further, positing that the apeiron, or the boundless, was the origin of everything, a concept that hinted at the infinity of the universe. Anaximenes, building on this quest for unity, proposed air as the fundamental element, seeing it as flexible and transformative. Heraclitus of Ephesus, however, brought a strikingly different perspective, suggesting that fire represented the essence of all things and that everything is in constant change, guided by a rational principle he called the Logos. Together, these ideas formed a powerful shift in human thought, one that pursued reason and observation over myth and mystery. The influence of these early philosophers extended far beyond Ionia. Their ideas about fundamental elements and rational principles would shape the thoughts of Plato and Aristotle, who built on the notion of a rationally ordered universe. This influence continued into the realms of science, theology, and metaphysics. Today, we stand on the shoulders of these early philosophers. Their legacy is not just a set of theories or ideas confined to history books. It's the very foundation of the scientific method, the drive to seek patterns and principles in the world. The Ionians taught us to ask why, and to look beyond surface appearances, inspiring a tradition of inquiry that challenges us to understand reality with both reason and observation. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of the roots of Western philosophy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for our next video.